What's up, YouTube? This is your girl, Megan. Welcome back to my channel, cousins. However, if this is your first time joining me on today, welcome to the HoodAstroQ. It is here that we use information from celestial bodies to help us gain a better understanding of our favorite celebrities, world events, but most importantly, our damn selves. So click the subscribe button to become a part of the family. Thumbs up this video to grow the channel, and then finally hit the notification bell so that way you will be alerted whenever I make a new post. And then finally, if you are interested in booking a natal chart reading of your own, contact me at astrowerld, that's astro WERLD, at gmail.com, and we can get you squared away on today. So as you guys can see, today I'm coming to y'all once more with yet another celebrity birth chart reading, this time on none other than Sidora. So as I'm sure many of you may know, Sidora is an actress, and she actually is one of the most recent additions to Real Housewives of Atlanta. It's her and another girl. I can't remember the other girl's name, but they're definitely two of the younger, more fresher cast members. Okay, no shade. And so we're a few episodes in now, and thus far, a lot of people have been raising an eyebrow at Sidora's storyline. So she comes on the show with her family. She has a husband, and I also believe she lives with her mother for the moment. And they do share 2 children together, and she also has a son from a previous relationship. And one of the biggest concerns that a lot of people have is in regards to her marriage, because, I mean, since literally day one, first episode, her husband has been extremely rude, inconsiderate, and just downright weird when it comes to the way that he has been treating Drew. So an online publication reads, Real Housewives of Atlanta fans found a new house husband who can give former house husband Apollo Nita a run for his money when it comes to bagging the title of worst house husband. Loyal fans of Real Housewives of Atlanta would know that Apollo, husband of former housewife Phaedra Parks, was not only an awful husband, but a questionable person in general. But new housewife Sidora's husband, Ralph Pittman, is ready to take over the infamous title. In the previous episodes, we saw Ralph being extremely controlling and dismissive of his wife's feelings and thoughts. Although fans were far from impressed with the new house husband's behavior and attitude, they were willing to overlook it by attributing his behavior to him being shy and uncomfortable around the cameras. But after watching the recently aired episode of RHOA, fans have ceased to give him the benefit of the doubt and slammed him for his toxic masculinity and arrogance. Drew and her husband visited a therapist to work on their issues and strengthen their marriage. During the therapy, when Ralph was asked about his past childhood, the entrepreneur shocked everyone with his response. Ralph revealed that growing up, his father was absent from his life as he left their family at a young age. So he grew up with his mother, but apparently she wasn't very affectionate, and he had to take on the role of the man of the house and provide for the family. Ralph claimed that despite his best efforts, his mother never appreciated or acknowledged it, so he decided to teach her a lesson. When he was in his senior year, he left the house to go stay with his father and watch his mother fend for herself without his help. His mother soon got evicted from their home, and she eventually apologized to Ralph and acknowledged his efforts. Ralph was trying to explain how respect was important to him and he didn't appreciate being emasculated by anybody. Unfortunately for Ralph, his childhood anecdote didn't sit well with the fans. And so, I'm going to stop there because it does go on and on. Long story short, in this most recent episode, the couple went to therapy, and as he was opening up with all of these issues, it was almost like he was still being extremely insensitive and very dismissive, even as the article stated, of Drew and her feelings. She would cry at certain moments and he would smirk. This also piggybacks one of the other episodes where they got into a really heated argument about him picking up and leaving, like literally leaving the house, leaving the state, traveling, getting up and going away without telling his wife about his whereabouts. He would do this whenever he would be upset or angry. And then at some point, she also mentioned something about him surveilling her or keeping tabs on her, recording her in the house. It started to get really weird really fast. And he would do a lot of gaslighting in terms of, explaining things to her in terms of how he's a man and he doesn't want to be emasculated. And essentially the relationship really seems to hinge on his ability to remain in control of everything from the buying or the purchase of their allegedly new home to, even down to their sex, because that was a complaint of his in the therapy session. I want sex X amount of times a week. Meanwhile, Drew is trying to list out all of these complex and nuanced feelings that she has about the relationship, and she just really wants to work through this, and everybody collectively is really side-eyeing him as well as the marriage. So yeah, I wanted to get deeper off into that because I actually pulled up Drew's natal chart and I want y'all to take a look with me because it explains a lot about this marriage as well as a lot about Drew. So without further ado, let's just go ahead and get started. So Drew Sidora was born May 1st, 1985 in Chicago, Illinois. And this would actually place her sun at the 10th degree of Taurus. And the first thing that stood out to me was the fact that she has a lot of prominent 1 energy attached to her chart, starting with her birth number, right, being the 1st. And then she also having that sun at the 10th degree. The number 10 does reduce to 1. And the number 1 is very masculine. It's a very masculine number. It's a number that deals with hyper aggressiveness, okay, dominance, and control, power, even in a lot of instances. So a lot of women with very prominent 1 energy can attract hyper masculine, machismo, maybe even toxic masculine men. In fact, these may be the only type of men that these women seek out because in a lot of ways, these women are very dominant themselves, which is very interesting given that Drew is a Taurus and Taurus is a feminine sign. However, these women, the way that they express themselves, these are alpha women for all intents and purposes. And I just find it very interesting given a lot of the statements that Drew's husband has made in regards to his own masculinity. So I could see where there could be innate power struggles within the relationship. Or even because she does come across as very passive as well. So I can also see how she would dumb herself down in order to make herself more palatable to these super hyper masculine men. Not to mention that Taurus, especially when we talk about Taurus women, these are the type of women who naturally are drawn towards men who play the more traditional roles within the household. So a lot of times these are women who could have had fathers that were your quintessential protectors and providers in some cases. And now I know the husband had said something about Drew's mother running over the father or whatever the case may be. We'll address that separately. But typically, Taurus women are accustomed to that. And even if they don't come from that, they, at the very least, look for that in other men. And this is also reinforced considering that Drew's sun is conjunct her north node, which is at the 18th degree of Taurus. The number 18 could also deal with hypermasculinity as well. But it's also a very challenging number that can be a bit of a red flag, especially if we're talking about in conjunction to the sun, because it can speak to attracting partners, or in a woman's chart, a husband specifically, right, who may not really be all that well intentioned. It could also even reinforce him being very selfish, self-serving, inconsiderate, just downright, mean, and barbaric. We're talking kind of like caveman energy, where there is need for Drew to look over her shoulder, right? Where he could be a very questionable person with questionable intent. So already I'm not really liking the look of that. Okay. And then you take into consideration that Drew's sun and north node are opposing her Saturn, which happens to be conjunct that Scorpio south node. Her Saturn is at the 25th degree to be exact. That number 25 breaks down to 7, which can deal with victimization, sacrifice, as well as being gaslighted. It can deal with a person, especially a woman, right, who can attract narcissistic men with that Saturn in opposition to the sun in the north node in Taurus. This could deal with where Drew lacks standards, okay, in relationships, and a lot of it has to do with a very wishy-washy sense of self. These are people who tend to struggle within themselves in terms of their own personal self-worth and self-value. These are women who tend to draw or be drawn towards codependent and toxic relationships, where they're more liable to, like, accommodate or maybe even make trade-offs or adjust their own standards or their own values and the things that they feel are important in order to preserve a situation or keep a man or keep the family going, especially if there are other incentives involved. And typically when we talk about Taurus sun women and even that North Node energy, those incentives could include like security, especially like financially. So she said her husband was some type of tech entrepreneur, which, I mean, let's not sleep on the tech industry. They do make a lot of money if he does, do in fact what she claims he does. So let's not sleep on that there. And I'm not saying that she's broke either, but I will say that there are going to be some financial issues either between just Drew or her and her husband within that marriage, which we'll get to momentarily. However, nonetheless, these are women who will still settle if they feel like they're going to be met with some level of stability and security there, right? And they don't really like to hop or jump ship. So they'll remain in relationships that don't really serve them for very long periods of time. Because the first thing that I was thinking about was, y'all been together for 6 years. And this relationship, I mean, from what we see, it looks pretty bad. It looks like trash. You've been doing this for 6 years, mamas. So that explains a lot. There are a lot of karmic issues when we talk about that Sun conjunct Taurus North Node opposing that Saturn and Scorpio South Node that these women or these people in general could have when it comes to breaking attachments, right? Releasing bonds. A lot of times they could even come together with people when it comes to like trauma bonds. But these are also people who are naturally drawn towards abusive dynamics, especially if we talk about that Saturn conjunct that Scorpio South Node. These are people who may even in early life circumstances or in past lives been used, abused, whether it's psychologically, emotionally, sexually, physically, right? So she can definitely be drawn towards abusive men. And I actually wouldn't even rule out physical abuse, y'all, to be honest with you, because she does have her Mercury conjunct Venus in Aries as well. And that 18th degree could also deal with like hyper aggression. So I'm not even necessarily ruling that out. But what we have been able to see on camera is clear, like just psychological abuse, just playing out. And that's very much indicative of that opposition between her Sun and South Node and as well as that Saturn and Scorpio. These are also women who tend to have a lot of karmic debt involving men as well. It could have started with the father, which explains a lot. And this opposition between her Sun and Saturn, right, conjunct that South Node, could deal with her husband keeping her and her family under surveillance. That's also reinforced with her Gemini Mars opposing Saturn as well. So he may even be the type of person to hack phones, hack their cars, put in trackers on things. This could also even deal with where her husband is intentionally manipulative of her in order to keep her where he wants her. This could also be indicative of a person who lives a double life. So I am almost positive that he is cheating or has cheated at some point. It also just reinforces him being very cruel and inconsiderate. Then her Jupiter in Aquarius is also squaring that Saturn and South node, further reinforcing him using his tech and gadgets to spy on her, almost like some perverted type of stuff. And I wouldn't be surprised if his tendency to do that was not only limited to her, if that makes sense. Like, it gives me like this weird perverted energy, sick, that doesn't really sit right with me. And he is also in Aquarius, and I thought that was interesting. So that also explains him being a tech guy, but it could also deal with him being extremely cold, callous, right? Cruel. These are people who can just be, just completely emotionally inaccessible, but also very willful, just very unreasonable people to deal with, and people who, when they're really dark-sided, don't really care. They don't care. And so the whole idea of him smiling while she was crying, like, that's very dark-sided Aquarius. And with her Jupiter squaring that South node and Saturn, even her North node and Sun, that Taurus Sun, she could definitely attract men who get off on her emotional pain and suffering. Almost, it's kind of like an experiment, right? Especially with it squaring that South node. It's like an experiment to see how far he can push her, where it's almost like she's not even human, right? These are men who can objectify people, like, quite literally. It's very psychopathic, and like I said, it's not normal. And I'm actually even concerned for her kids, because she also has her Pluto in opposition to her Sun. Not to mention that Jupiter squaring off her Sun, and then that Sun in opposition to her South. No, I wouldn't be surprised if he was, very cold to her own Sun, or if he was abusive to her kids. Now, allegedly, this is the part where I'm going to say allegedly, this is speculative, but based on her natal alignments, I see some hard times for them kids. Which ones, I'm not sure, but it's a problem, y'all. It's a problem, and I'm not even going to say the extent and the degree to which I feel like there could be issues. But this man he got some shit going on, y'all. And I'm trying to get a hold of his natal chart, because that could actually be a lot more helpful to me. But so far, what I'm seeing is not a good look. You could also look at that opposition between her Sun and Pluto, and that Sun and Saturn, as well as that Scorpio South node, as her being in a relationship with a man where he has to take on, a kid that isn't his. But like I said, he could be very closed off to it, almost even very resentful and spiteful about it, right? There could be a lot of either like love or hate feelings, or intense feelings of love and hatred. These dynamics may even play out as the Sun gets older. So, that's heavy. And, this just overall reinforces her being in a very controlling relationship, her attracting very controlling and abusive men. I wouldn't be surprised if this was a very similar dynamic to what happened in her previous marriage or relationship, the one where she had her first son. Now, also, she does have that Venus in Aries, and it's actually forming a square. It's squaring off her Neptune, which could also even deal with her attracting narcissists. But her being the type of person to fall in love with people's potential. These are the type of women who are willing to make sacrifices in relationships, even if they're empty sacrifices. For example, sacrificing their identity, sacrificing the things that they like and that they want in the relationship. So overall, this is just red flag after red flag after red flag after red flag. With her Mercury conjunct that Venus in Aries, she could also be the type of person to not like failure. So these are the types of people who could also kind of continue to stick things out, or get this kind of tunnel vision mentality when it comes to their relationships. These are also people who tend to merge their identity with that of their partners. So like overly identifying with their other partner, which for obvious reasons can be extremely unhealthy. She's also a Virgo moon. Now that Virgo moon explained a lot about her mom, in terms of her mom being just very overbearing. Virgo moon individuals can have mothers who are helicopter mothers. They can also be controlling, the type of mothers to invade your privacy and to be just very critical of everything that's going on in your life. These are the mothers who feel obligated to, kind of pry and pick apart everything that's going on in your household, right? And maybe even has the tendency to make her feel inadequate about herself at times. It's also reinforced with her moon squaring Uranus in Sagittarius. You could even look at that as her mom being a preacher and her mom using that religion to kind of berate her and force her way into her life, where she just feels entitled to Drew's private life. So she has a lot of stuff going on, and it's really, I wish I could say I was surprised, but I'm not. And then finally, before I end this video, I do also want to point out the fact that she does have Gemini Mars conjunct her Chiron. That right there is an extremely damning aspect to have in terms of a woman in her relationship with men. Like I said, this could almost guarantee that she attracts men who don't know how to be faithful. These are men who could, once again, have completely different identities. Like men who could be completely different, like Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde, like flip switch. And it's actually very scary, or men who try to make themselves look one way in public and then be completely different behind closed doors. So, I mean, this could also deal with where he doesn't know what he wants, where the husband could often send her mixed signals a lot. It's, and then taking it back to that Mars opposing Saturn as well. I think he is just mentally like twisted and demented, honestly. And you could even look at that as him further even exploiting a lot of that verbal abuse, psychological abuse. You can even look at that Mercury conjunct Venus and Aries as verbal abuse as well. So I really do feel bad. I really feel bad for Drew. This is crazy. So that concludes this reading. Y'all drop down in the comment section. Let me know what you thought. Does this chart surprise you? Do any of her placements surprise you? And would y'all be interested in looking at a natal chart reading for her husband? So yeah, drop down in the comment section, sound off, let your opinions be heard, and make sure you practice unconditional self-love so that you can love others. And until the next video, I holla. Bye. You could also look at this opposition between her Sun and Pluto, as well as that Sun and Saturn, as, you know, if they were to ever divorce, Drew and her husband, I am almost 100% sure that there would be a really nasty custody battle or some type of even child support battle that could ensue. And then finally, piggybacking on my earlier statements in regards to their finances, I do feel like Drew's husband could be taking a lot of like the more controlling approach in regards to their finances and all of that, because there could be some legal issues or some tax issues. And y'all heard it first. If you guys see a headline in the future in regards to this couple either having like some repossessions or, you know, getting a tax lien put on their home or something like that, or any type of issues involving like debt, taxes, the IRS, so on and so forth, you heard it here first. There's some funny business going on with their joint finances, and it's giving me the vibes that he could be making bad investments, or maybe even that he is not really forthcoming about what he has, what he does, and how much he makes. You know, so y'all can do whatever y'all want with that, but there's some funny business going on with their money, or at least at some point there will be. You rest assured.